What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Netsec Explained, and in this video we're going to show you how to do a web app pen test using Burp Suite. Now, one problem with a lot of modern tutorials, especially around tools, is that they tend to sound a lot more like man pages or documentation. So they'll show you the little command line flags or all the little buttons, but they won't tell you why you should use each of these options. So for this video, we're going to do things a little different. Instead, we're going to walk you through a typical pen test and show you where to use each option in Burp along the way. If you're new to Burp Suite, you're going to walk away with a pretty basic understanding of how to perform a pen test and how Burp fits into it all. If you're a little more experienced, it's always good to see how somebody else uses these tools. Now, this isn't going to be my full pen test methodology. That'll take way longer to make. But if you're interested, let me know in the comments down below, and I might just make that into a future video. With all that out of the way, I'm excited, so let's get started. The first thing we're going to need is a target. I find the OWASP Juice Shop to be a safe and reliable resource for testing some of these things out. So we're going to use that. I have a link in the description on how to spin up your own version using Docker, which is what I'm going to use. But if you want an easier one to access, there's a Heroku version that's online already. I'll have the link in the description for that as well. Next, we're going to open up Burp Community, and we're just going to hop over to the Proxy tab, make sure that Intercept is turned off, and we're going to go ahead and open our browser. This will open the Chromium browser that's already pre-configured with Burp Suite. I'm going to go to my local Docker instance and access Juice Shop there. And I'll zoom in a little bit just so that it's a little easier to see. Awesome. Now, the first thing you want to do with any new web application is reconnaissance. I typically do reconnaissance in two phases. So the first phase is to figure out what the app even does. And then the second phase is application mapping. Now, this phase 2 takes much longer, so we're going to do a simpler version of it. So looking at phase 1, we can take a look at this application and see that it's a simple e-commerce platform, right? It's got products. We can look at the product reviews. We can create an account. And we have a couple other things that we can access as an unauthenticated user. Later in the video, we're going to register a user account, and then we're going to see what a registered user can take advantage of. While I go through my application mapping phase, I like to have my browser kind of side by side with Burp, and I'll hop over to this HTTP history tab just so that I can see how each request or each link that I click on is sent through the application. So for instance, I can click on this product and I see product 1 reviews. If I look at the product, I see one review from admin@juice.shop, and it says one of my favorites. So if I look at the product reviews request, this is a REST API request for product 1 reviews. And I look at the response and I see 304 not modified. That's some caching that they have built in. Instead, I can see the original request, which is this one of my favorites review, which we already saw for product 1, and the author is admin@juice.shop. So that's pretty easy. We can tell that in the application, as we go through, each product we click on has a different API request. So this banana juice is product 6 reviews, and if we wanted to see the reviews in that, we can take a look at the API request. Awesome. Super easy to do. Next, let's take a look at some of the things that a regular user who's not authenticated to the application yet can do. So we'll go to this customer feedback. It looks like just a simple customer feedback form. So let's go ahead and add a comment. This is cool. And I'll give it a rating of 5 stars because why not? So the CAPTCHA we need to solve is 4 minus 6 plus 1. So that should be -1 if my math is right. So let's go ahead and click submit. There we go. Thank you so much for the 5-star feedback. And over in our Burp history, we see a couple things. So we see this REST CAPTCHA. And if we look at the response, it's CAPTCHA ID 0 with our CAPTCHA 4 minus 6 plus 1, which is the answer we had to which was the question that we had to answer, and then the answer of -1. So already we run into a problem where this CAPTCHA is giving us the answers. So if we wanted to automate creating reviews, we can just make a request to this CAPTCHA endpoint, collect the answer, and then submit it in our feedback. So in our feedback, we can see this is the post request. This is the information that we submitted. Our CAPTCHA ID that we had to test was CAPTCHA 0, which we just saw. The answer we provided was -1. The comment was, "This is cool." It looks like it added in our author. Since we're not logged in, we're considered anonymous. And then rating 5. So already there's a couple things that we want to try and play around with on this. And this is just part of our reconnaissance phase, right? So already we want to play around with a couple things. So the first thing I want to know is, can I replay this request? Can I automate this request? And then can I automate either the rating or the author to forge author comments to make it seem like different reviews are coming from different people? So let's go ahead, right click, send to repeater. And the first thing I do whenever I send something to repeater is I just replay the request. I want to get a baseline. Now, if they implemented their CAPTCHA properly, this should fail. So let's see. Nope, 201 created. It just created a new feedback. I can see this feedback ID 10. And so if I click send again, we get a new feedback ID 11. So we can play around with this. Let's try 500. And this will give us a rating of 500. It's still created, it says status success. What if I change from anonymous to Anthony, just because? Click send, and it's accepted it. So already we have the ability to forge feedbacks. The other thing that I like to do in repeater tab is up here, you can click on it and rename the repeater tab. So in this one, this is for feedback, and I consider this a finding. So we're going to say replay, which is insufficient anti-automation. So this is going to be a finding that we'll want to write in a report later on. Replay plus impersonation. And whenever I have a repeater tab that has a finding, I like to put a star next to it so it's really easy to spot. I typically have a lot of different repeater tabs open. Sometimes I'll get a couple dozen in any sort of burp session. And so having the stars so that I can quickly go back and find the exact request that allows me to redo or demonstrate that exploit or that finding is really helpful. The other thing that I like to do is go to the proxy tab, and we can just go ahead and highlight this. So I right click, highlight, and I already found, or I should say, we have a finding. So I'll highlight this in red, and then this CAPTCHA request will highlight this in yellow since it's attached to that other finding bit. We'll see how we can use these highlights later, but for now, this is just going to get us started. So let's go back to the web browser and take a look at the next thing, which is going to be our photo wall. So as soon as I click on photo wall, we see this application configuration and this memories. Before we look at those, we see the photo wall is just a bunch of different pictures. They have a caption if you hover over them. So now we can take a look at the requests. We see this application configuration. Now the application configuration, it's just a GET request to REST admin application config. If we look at the response, this says 304 not modified. What we can actually do is send this to repeater. We want to get rid of the if none match. And this will send us the original 200 OK. And this has a lot of configuration information for the Juice Shop application. Now, there could be sensitive information in here, or it could just be extraneous information. So informational finding, right? Something very low, but it's something worth keeping an eye on. So I'll leave that as a homework for you to kind of dig through this and see if you can find any sensitive information. Instead, I'm just going to rename my repeater tab to application configuration. We're not going to put a star next to it because I'm not really concerned about it as a finding, even though I would consider it in a normal pen test to be an informational finding, something that they shouldn't show regular users. Let's hop back to the proxy tab, and we see this get rest memories. If we look at the response, we can start to scroll down, And we see some of the things that we would expect to see, right? So we have the image path, we have a caption, but we also see something that's a little extraneous. For each image that's uploaded to the photo wall, we have the user object, which includes a person's user ID. In this case, this is 13, their username, their email, their password hash, which is a big no-no. And it also looks like this is an MD5 hash, which is also a no-no. We have their role, which is deluxe, and we have their deluxe token. So here's a bunch of information that we can essentially steal from the application about its users. If we continue to scroll down, we can see other users who have uploaded things. So we have here user ID 4, user ID 21. So this is user enumeration and definitely a problem. So I'm going to right click, send a repeater. Again, baseline request. So here's our 200 OK. I'm going to do a star since this is a finding, and then I'll say photo wall user enumeration plus information leakage. And then I'll hop back over to our proxy and right click, highlight, and this is a finding. This application configuration, since we're going to want to look at it a little later on, I'll just highlight it in blue. Again, we'll see how the highlights work a little later on. Let's keep going. So if I go to the About Us page, we can see the application configuration popping up again, but we also see this API feedback. So this one's a little new. If we look at the About Us page, we can scroll down. This is all lorem ipsum, which is just basic text. The idea is we're not supposed to read it. Check out boring terms of service if we wanted to take a look at their terms of service. So I'll just go ahead and open that in a new tab. We can see that this is part of their FTP server, so that's definitely something worth taking a look at. I'll leave that as homework for you. And we also see in our About Us page, customer feedback down at the bottom. And here's ours, which is, this is cool. We see anonymous, undefined, anonymous, 5 stars, and Anthony. So these are the 3 feedback submissions that we made earlier. So I'm just going to scroll up a little bit more. Let's take a look at the actual API endpoint. So feedbacks, this is a simple GET request to API feedbacks. We take a look at our response. We scroll down, we can see the user ID of the person who submitted. So some of these are anonymous, some of these are not. We can see their rating and their comment. It looks like they are anonymizing their users just a little bit, which is kind of helpful. But if I scroll down to the feedbacks that we created, we can see the 2 from Anthony and Anonymous that have a rating of 500. So that just shows that what we submitted earlier in the feedbacks definitely turns into something that's returned back to the user. Now, this is something we might want to try maybe a cross-site scripting payload on. Maybe we can inject some sort of cross-site scripting payload in the comment or in the user ID itself without the application doing any proper filtering. So I will also leave that as a piece of homework for you. But I want you to get to start thinking about how we go about identifying different little rabbit holes that we want to go down as we're playing around with this application. So I'm going to right click this and highlight it blue, because this is something that I'd like you to continue to dig into. And this FTP legal, I'm curious what else is in that FTP folder, so I'll highlight that as blue as well. So let's keep going. Let's go ahead and create a user account. So I'm going to click on login, and we don't have a login information. Now there's a couple things that we can do as far as attacks. We can try user enumeration, we can try password spraying, we can try SQL injection. I'll leave all of those as homework for you. Instead, I want to map the registration process itself. Now, this is something that'll likely create a number of different requests. And whenever I'm about to do something that I think will cause a number of different requests, I want to keep track of which ones are part of that and which ones are outside of it. So what I'll do is, before I start registering a new customer, I clicked the most recent request. I'll right click and I'll highlight it just a boring gray color. So I know that anything after this gray color is part of the user registration process. So I'm going to click not yet a customer, and we see the security questions pop up. Let's go ahead and create an email address, password, and our security question, and register. So now that we've registered an account, we can see all of the requests that were involved. So the first thing that pops up is API security questions. Now this is a simple GET request, API security questions. We see our response. We can see the security question ID. So we see ID 1, 2, 3, and the questions, your eldest sibling middle name, your mother's maiden name. So it gives us essentially a list of options for our security ID, and that's probably used in the next request. So if we look at users, this is our post. We have a post to API users. Our parameters are the email address that I submitted, the password and repeat password that I submitted, and then we have a security question object. The security question that I answered was ID 1, your eldest sibling middle name, and then the answer that we provided. Before I show you the response, let's take a look at the security answers. This is another post request to API security answers, and we see our user ID, which is user 22, has the answer of ASDF to security question ID 1. So that could be useful. We look at the response here. We see that it's created. It's attached to user ID 22, who is us, and the answer itself is encrypted. Now we can do a hash ID on this to figure out what type of hash this is. So hash ID in Kali, and then I'll just paste in the hash, and it thinks that it's a SHA-256. So we're not going to reverse that anytime soon. So instead we can just ignore that and go about our day. So let's jump back to this API users, because there's something interesting here that I want you to take a look at. So we submitted our email, our password, and our security questions. And in response, we get a user object. So this is username. Our role is customer. We do not have a deluxe token. We have a default profile image. Our user ID is 22, and then it has our email address. Now, whenever you see something like this, it's really important because you can try and play around with it and test out some mass assignment and see if you can possibly change the role or the deluxe token. But I'll leave that as a homework for you. We're still doing our recon step, and we're not even really deep into the exploitation phase. So this is definitely something that we'll want to follow up on later. So I'll highlight this blue. And before we log in, I just want to show you why the highlights are so useful. So Burp has a couple features. You notice the gray highlight I use just for me and my own visual reference. But if we go up to this bar right here, click on it, and we click Show Highlighted Items, Apply, it will only show the items in the request that are highlighted. So these are things that were either findings, attached to findings, or things that we'd like to follow up on later. So this is super helpful, especially if you're collaborating or if you're doing a multi-week pen test and you want to try and remember what some of the other rabbit holes are that you want to go down. And just as easily, you can right-click, comment, and then unhighlight if you don't want one of these requests to show up anymore. Now, even though this is an opportunity to add notes into Burp, and if we scroll over, you can see a little comment section where you can also add notes into Burp, I don't exactly recommend it. Instead, it's a lot better to create an external notepad or template so that you can write your notes specific to the pen test, because burp states get large. First off, we're using Community Edition, so there's no saving the burp state. But even when you have Pro Edition and you can save the burp date and you can share it, nobody's going to go back through it because these become tens of gigs in size. So it's always best to take the information out of here, use it really quickly, and then put it into some external notepad or external note source. Awesome. So the next bit, we're going to uncheck highlighted items, and we're just going to go ahead and log into the application. Logging into the application is another thing that can respond with a couple different requests. So I'm going to do that same little trick, right click, highlight, and I'll just make it a gray color. And then let's go ahead and log in. Whoa. All right. So there's a few requests that popped up, which is the perfect opportunity to show you why highlighting a request and then performing those actions helps out. So we can see this post request, which was the actual act of logging in. This is where we submitted our email and our password. We see the response, which provides us this token. This is a JWT token if you haven't seen this format before, but you'll also notice that it's base64 encoded. So if we want to try and read this JWT token, we can right click, copy it, go to decoder, paste that in, and then decode as base64. Now, because it adds in a lot of little binary stuff, it's going to default to hex in the response, but let's just make it text. That way it's a little easier to read. So we can see at the beginning, this is a type JWT with RS256. In the middle, we have our ID, which is user ID 22. That's us. We don't have a username. It has our email and it has our password hash, which is a problem. That should never be returned back to the user. So that's a finding that we're going to want to highlight at some point. Again, there's not an easy way to note that in Burp, especially as a JWT token, but we can easily take that out and put it into our notepad saying that the JWT token leaks user credentials in MD5 format. And then it has some of the other information, right? Last login IP, deluxe token, profile image, TOTP secret, that's for our multi-factor. Is the account active, is true, when it was created, when it was last updated, and it's never been deleted. The last little section is how long the JWT token lasts, or at this point, it's when this was initialized. So I think this JWT token lasts forever, which is another problem. And then we have the signature at the end. This is part of that RS256. So I'm not going to go into detail in this video about what JWT tokens are and how they work and different components of them. This is just a quick and easy way that we can use Burp Decoder to read base64 encoded information. And it's not just base64, right? We can encode and decode in URL, in HTML, ASCII hex, regular hex, and binary. So let's head back to our proxy. So that's our login. We see this who am I request. And in the first who am I request, it's going to respond with, we don't know who you are. And that was the original, 200 response. Eventually, we're going to get an update. And so now we can do a who am I request with that JWT token. And in our response, it says you're user 22, here's your email address, and here's your last login IP. So this isn't particularly useful, but it's kind of good to know what every endpoint does in the application. We also see this search box. This is something that we might want to take a look at some point down the road. We can send this to repeater, delete this if none match. Click send if it wants to send. Oh, it looks like my burp has crashed. So let me go ahead and fix that and we'll hop right back in. Hey, while I'm working to get us back on track, let me know what you think of the video so far. I really appreciate your feedback and would like to continue the conversation well after the video is over. And if you like what I'm doing here, leave me a thumbs up because it really helps out with the YouTube algorithm. Thank you for your patience, and now let's get back to the video. Sorry about that. It looks like I didn't allocate enough memory for my virtual machine, so lesson learned. All right, leaving off from where we were, we just logged into the application with a brand new user account. Now, let's take a look at adding an item to the basket and see what the purchasing workflow looks like. So we're going to take a look at this apple juice. We'll just go ahead and add it to our basket. We can see the workflow over here in our burp where we send a get request for basket 6, which is the basket that belongs to us. And in the original request, it will show, or in the original response, it will show that there are no items in the basket. Then the next request is going to be a post, which adds an item to our basket. We can see that with our post. It adds product ID 1, which is the apple juice, to basket ID 6, which is our basket, and it adds 1 of the initial product. In response, we can see that it will give us a success. There is a basket to product ID mapping, and that's going to be this ID 9. But we'll see how that operates later on. We also have information on the product itself. So this API products one, this is a simple GET request, and it just gets the contents of what belongs to product ID one, which is that apple juice, right? Super easy. And then finally, it re-gets our basket ID, in which case we see a 200 OK with our basket ID 6 belonging to user ID 22, and that contains product ID 1, the apple juice. Now, something I want to key you into is whenever you see a number like this at the end of an API endpoint, I want you to start thinking, okay, so I'm number 6, I see number 6. What happens if I change this to a 5? Or what happens if I change this to a 4? Will I be able to see somebody else's contents? So let's go ahead, right click, send to repeater. I'm going to go ahead and click send. And so this is going to show us basket ID 6 for user ID 22. And now all I have to do is change this to a 5, click send. And now I see basket ID 5 for user ID 16. And the contents of the basket are different. In this case, it's holding the egg fruit juice and a couple other things. We can do the same by changing it to a 4. We can see that this is basket ID 4, belongs to user ID 11, and it contains raspberry juice. Now, this is great and easy to do with repeater, but let's see if we can automate this process. Instead, what we're going to do is right click, send to Intruder, and then Intruder is a way that we can automate search. So the workflow for Intruder, the first thing you want to do is clear the content. Sometimes Intruder tries to be helpful and add a little variable. So for example, if we wanted to set that as a variable, clear will just remove all variables, and we want to capture this ID 4 and click add. We want to leave it at sniper. I'm not going to go into the details of what each of these do separately, but sniper is going to be the one that you use most commonly. We're going to go to payloads, and we want to change from simple list to numbers, because we want to try number 1, basket ID 2, basket ID 3, and all the way up to, let's try basket ID 10. So we'll start at basket ID 1, we'll go all the way up to basket ID 10. We'll step by 1, so that means it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. And this little option has always bitten me in the butt, so we're going to turn that off. There's no other changes that we need to make, so we can go ahead and start the attack. This little box just says that using Burp Community, it's not using a threaded approach, so it's going to go a little slower than if you were using Burp Pro, which is fine for us for now. So I'm going to click OK, and it's going to make all the different requests. As that's going through, you can see we're requesting basket 1, basket 2, basket 3, basket 4, basket 5, and each one has a different response. We can see the size of the response, we can see the contents of it, we can see the user ID that's associated with it. But instead of looking at each of these individual baskets to try and figure out who they belong to, I'm going to show you something really cool. So let's go to settings. And if we scroll all the way down to the bottom, we have this grep extract, and we can extract items from our request. Now, you can write your own custom regular expression. If you don't want to do that, I don't want to do that. I tend to be a little lazy when it comes to things like this. So we're just going to go ahead and fetch a response. This is going to give us a typical response to our request. And we're going to highlight what we actually want to capture, which is this user ID and then the ID number. So you can see in the start after expression, it finds null. You can also see the end at delimiter created at. This null can actually be a little tricky for us. So instead, I'm just going to highlight the 11. So it captures the user ID to start, and it ends at created at. And then we go ahead and click OK. So now when we go to our results tab, we have the user ID column, and it shows what user ID each basket belongs to. So our initial request, which was basket ID 4, we can see that here, belongs to user ID 11. We can see the same thing here. But other than that, basket 1, 2, and 3 correspond to the same ID number for the users. And then basket 16 for basket 5, and then basket 6 is for us, which is user ID 22. Cool. Now, this intruder trick is really helpful. So I want to show you another way to do this where we can extract even more information out of it. So I'm just going to go ahead and discard this. I'm going to jump back over to my proxy history and this endpoint API products 1. Let's jump to repeater so you know what this looks like. And all this does is just return the product based on the product ID. I can get rid of some of this extra stuff. So product ID 1 is apple juice. Product ID 6, for example, is banana juice. We can see that there. So let's do the same thing, but we're going to extract the name and the description and the price for each of these using Burp Intruder. So I'm going to right click, send to Intruder. Same workflow. We're going to hit clear. We're going to change the ID number. We're going to jump to payloads, change this to numbers. We're going to start at 1 and let's go all the way up to 50 just to see what the first 50 products look like. Turn this off and let's go to settings. This way we can automatically do our grep extract. Turn that on, click add, and we're going to create 2 of them. So the first one, we're going to fetch the response. Here's our example response, and we're going to grab the name, banana juice, and we'll copy that. And then we're going to fetch the response again. We're going to grab the description, monkeys love it the most. Okay. And just for fun, let's do one more and we'll add the price, which is going to be this $1.99 here. So now we can go ahead, start our attack. And as it goes through and enumerates each of the products, we can see the product name, the description of the product, and the price, all through Burp Intruder. This is something that as soon as I found out how to do it, I've been using it all the time. So this is worth understanding how to operate. We can see that the products, there's some product gaps in between, and then it looks like the products end at product ID 43. Cool. So this is a really useful technique on how you can use Burp Intruder and why you would use Burp Intruder along with its grep extract. So let's go ahead, close this up and jump back over to our repeater tab, because this is where we were able to change the basket ID. This is a finding. This is a form of insufficient authorization, which means that I as user A can access user B's stuff, and that's a problem. So this is baskets, and we'll call this auth the Z. It's an auth the Z issue. And it's just like last time, we'll go ahead, right click and highlight this red. The next thing that we're going to take a look at is logic flaws. Now, if you've never experienced a logic flaw, I'll walk you through the process. But basically, a logic flaw is where developers of an application assume that a user is going to follow the same steps in a workflow that's presented through the user interface. Now, you'll usually start step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, and then from there, we ask the question, what if we can skip from step 1 to step 3 or step 2 to step 4, or even just straight from 1 to 4? So we're going to walk through that process. Now, the first thing we're going to do is purchase an item as though we were a regular user. So as we go through each of these steps, we'll take a look at what's going on the left-hand side in the burp history. So we have our basket. So I would say step 1 is add item to basket. Step 2, change quantity of item in basket. So the process for changing the quantity is this will get the basket information. So basket items 9, which is the basket to product mapping. So basket items 9, we have 1, it's product ID 1, and it belongs to basket 6. When we change the quantity, we get this put request, which is put, and then it changes the quantity number to 2. And then it requests the new basket information. This is a simple GET request, so it will show currently we have 2 of product 1. We can see the same thing again. If we increase it, we see this get, put, and then get the basket again. So that would be step 2. Step 3 is checkout. In here, we need to enter an address. You can just enter, fake information. It's not important. We're going to use this address. We're going to choose our delivery method, 1-day delivery, just because I'm lazy. Click continue. Now, we don't have any wallet balance, so we're going to add a credit card. And this needs to be 16 numbers exactly. There we go. We have no money in our wallet. So we're going to use our credit card. I'm going to go ahead and click submit. The new credit card has been created. We can see that over here on the right with our post API cards with the credit card information that we've provided. This is going to do a call to get API cards, which is going to return the credit card that we have on file. So we are user ID 22, credit ID number 7, and it belongs to us. So we're going to select that card, scroll down, and continue. And the last little thing that we're going to do is essentially just here's your order summary. Make sure that you approve. We can see what's going to happen here on the left. I'm going to approve the purchase. And this is our checkout process. And it gives us the opportunity to track our order. So if we look at the checkout process, this is a post request that is using payment ID 7, address ID 7, and delivery method 1. There's no significant coupon details, and we have purchased our product. So to recap, we have step 1, add to basket. Step 2, change the quantity. Step 3, use a credit card and an address. And then step 4 is to approve. So let's see how we can modify any of the steps along the way. So let's start from the beginning. We're going to jump back to the home page. We're going to add to basket. And we're going to take a look at our basket. Now we already know as we increase the quantity, it performs a put request with the specific quantity that we want. So we can do put quantity 5, and I'll say success. We have 5 of product ID 1 in basket 6. We can say put quantity 20, and it'll say success again. Oh, we can only order 5 items of this product. Never mind. So let's drop that back to 5. But what if we try to mess with the logic of the application? Already they're assuming that we're adding numbers. We're increasing in a positive direction. But what if we tried a negative number? So what if I did negative 50, for example? We see success. So that's interesting. So now we have negative 50 quantity to basket ID 6 of product 1. Now, before I minimize burp, what do you think we're going to see, or what should we expect to see in the basket as far as how much we owe for negative 50 of an item? If I go ahead and refresh this page, we're going to get negative 99 credits coming back to us. So instead of us having to pay money, it's going to pay us money. So we can go back through the checkout process, right? Checkout, pick our address, 1-day delivery, because I am impatient. And then instead of using our credit card, notice we can use our wallet now, because in the back end, we can imagine that our wallet balance is 0. But as long as our wallet balance is greater than how much is in the invoice, which is 98 credits, it's going to say, okay, you can pay with your wallet. So let's go ahead and actually pay with our wallet. And then this is going to be our purchase summary. It shows that we're going to do next day delivery. We have negative 99 credits in items in product. And so our final price is going to be negative 98. So we can submit our order and pay, and bam, just like that, we confuse the application into giving us money instead of us having to give them money. So that's a logic flaw. Now, this is a lot of fun, and I encourage you to continue to play around with the application. In fact, I'm going to give you a little piece of homework. There's a product on here that they are out of, right? This is the OWASP Juice Shop King of the Hill face mask. So the homework I'm going to give you for this one is I want you to purchase at least one of these face masks. It's going to take a little bit, but with all of the tools that we've gone over so far, you'll be able to do it. Okay, last thing, let's put it all together. How can we use the burp history, repeater, and intruder tools to take advantage of another logic flaw? I'm going to show you. Now, there's a 4-star challenge where we need to purchase what is called the Christmas Special. Now, it's not listed on any of the products, so we need to think of a clever way to find it and then buy it. So let's try that out. Okay, I created a new burp session and did a couple things just so that we can walk through the process together. So I log back in as my user, and the first thing we want to do is try and catch these products. So let's go ahead, add to basket, and grab this product ID. So we can send this back to Intruder. And from here, let's just go ahead and delete all this stuff. We want to list out all of the products, get their names and descriptions. We need to clear everything and then add. We're going to set the payloads. We're going to set this to numbers. We're going to start at 1 and go up to 50. Disable this payload encoding. And the only things we need to extract are the name and description. We're looking for something Christmassy. I need to change this position and get rid of the caching code. Now I can go back to settings, click add, fetch the response. And the first one we want is the name. I'll click OK. And the next one we want is the description. Okay. We can start attack. So we have the names and descriptions of all of the products that are listed in the OWASP Juice Shop application. But what's strange is that we can't see anything named Christmas. I'll go ahead and sort by name as I wait for this attack to finish. We see carrot juice, but we don't see Christmas anything. And it's the same thing for the description. We don't see Christmas anything. So what that means is that this product is not listed. The other thing that we can do is try to see if this endpoint, right, this product's endpoint, is something that we can list all of the products at once, but just instead of having an ID number here, we just have API products. We'll go ahead and click send. And so this will list out all of the products that are in the application, and we'll see the same problem. There's no Christmas. So how can we find a product that's not listed? Well, where I would start is, what if we try to add every product to our basket? So let's see what that looks like. So if I jump over to proxy, look at the proxy history, and I add a new item to my basket, we see this post to basket items. And when we see this post to basket items, we see the product ID, the basket number, and the quantity. So let's send this back to Intruder. We'll clear everything, and we'll change this product ID just like we did for the original attack when we tried to list out all of the products. So we'll go to payloads, change this to numbers. We'll go 1 to 50. We'll step by 1, turn off the payload encoding, and click start attack. So this is going to add every product in the application to our basket. We can click on any of these and we can see in response to this post, we have this success statement saying this product has been added. So what I would hope to see at the end of this is every product added in my basket, including the ones that aren't listed in the application. So we're going to wait a second for this attack to finish. And now that that's done, I can go ahead and discard this. and looking at my basket in the web browser itself, we can see every product added, including the Christmas surprise. So this is the product that we want to make sure is in our basket, and this is the only one that we want to purchase. So first, we're going to have to delete everything else out of our basket, and then we're going to have to find the ID of this item and re-add that in manually. So let's do that one at a time. First thing is I want to see the basket information. So let's go to proxy history. We see rest basket. I'll send this to repeater. Click send. And I want the Christmas. So the Christmas surprise box, the 2014 edition, is product ID 10. And product ID 10 is something that wasn't listed in our original query for the products. So ID 10 is the only one that we want to keep. So now that we know it's ID 10, let's get rid of everything else and then re-add in product ID 10. So let's see what it looks like to delete our first item off this list. I'm going to go ahead, highlight in gray, and I'm just going to click delete. And we have a delete request. So this is going to delete basket item 10. Now this is not product ID 1 or anything like that. This is basket item 10. And that's kind of where this gets a little tricky, because we have products that have an ID. We have the basket that has an ID, and we have the basket to product mapping that has an ID. And for this product and this basket, the mapping is ID 10. We can see that if we go to delete another item, this is now delete basket 11. So if we wanted to, we can increment each of these numbers and we can say delete basket 10, delete basket 11, delete basket 12, or delete basket items, I should say, 11, 12, 13, and so on. Or we can use Intruder for that. So let's go ahead and get the last item in our list, because we don't want to affect other users. So we only want to stay within our bounds. So we don't want to delete basket IDs that are lower than number 10 or number 11, which we've already deleted. So 12 would be the lowest number that we're going to use, but we don't want to delete any ID that's higher than the highest ID that we have. So I'm going to scroll all the way down to the bottom here, and I'm going to delete the latest item, and that's going to be basket item 48. So the bounds for me deleting items is going to be 12 as my lowest and 47 as my highest, since we already deleted 11 and 48. So let's go ahead, right click, send to Intruder one more time. We'll clear this out, re-add this in, change our numbers. So this is going to be 12 to 47. We're going to step by one. It's going to delete 36 items from our basket. We're going to turn off URL decode, and we're just going to start the attack. So this is going to go ahead and delete every item in our basket by going through and incrementally picking the basket item. Once this is done, we can go ahead and close this. We'll refresh our basket, and now there's nothing in our basket. So now we need to add in another product. I'm a little lazy, so we can go back to the original request in the burp history, or we can use intercept mode. Now we haven't used intercept mode in this video yet, and it's pretty straightforward. So instead of using the repeater tab, we get to intercept the request as it's coming through. So I'm going to go ahead, turn intercept on, and then add to basket. We can see it's going to get the basket items, and then this is the post. So this is the post to basket items where we're going to add product ID 1, and we want to change that to product ID 10. It's going to add it to our basket ID, which is basket ID 6, and we're only going to add one of them. So I can turn off intercept, and it's going to automatically go ahead and forward the rest of the requests just as normal. And now in the application, I can open up the basket, and here is our Christmas surprise. So let's check this out. We're going to add our address, 1-day delivery, and we'll use our wallet. This is our confirm page, and we're going to go ahead and place our order, and congrats. You successfully solved the challenge to purchase the Christmas special. Now, I know I ran into some issues during this video, but as you continue to go through the application mapping phase, your burp state should look a little bit like this. In the proxy history tab, we should have highlighted items so that when we go and show only the highlighted items, we can see a list of identified issues and endpoints that we want to follow up on later. You don't have to follow the exact same coloring scheme that I do, but typically I use red for issues that I've identified or endpoints that I've identified with issues, yellow as being associated with issues, blue as things that I want to follow up on later, and then gray as a little visual cue so that I can see what other endpoints are reached out to as part of the scripts whenever I click on something or perform a function. On the repeater tab, we should see a set of labeled tabs. I like to use stars to indicate findings that we've identified, and then of course everything else is labeled just so that I can quickly and easily go back to it. So there you have it, a hands-on guide to web app pen testing using Burp Suite. If you're new to Burp Suite, it can seem a little overwhelming at first, but with the right tools and methodology, you too can uncover vulnerabilities on the web. Well, that's all I have for you today. If you're new to Burp Suite, let me know what else you'd like to learn in the comments down below, and I'll make that into a future video. Or if you're already an expert, what else are some tips that you'd like to share with people who are just getting started? If you like this video, leave me a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to see more guides and walkthroughs like this. Stay safe, stay passionate, and I'll see you next time.